KEF's Q series speakers have delivered KEF's pleasing sound for many years now, both for stereo music and for your home theater. Our customers have always loved them because the Q series has always benefited from trickle-down technology first developed for KEF's much more expensive speakers. The KEF Q Meta speakers, the 9th generation of KEF's Q series, get their name from an important bit of technology that's been handed down called Metamaterial Absorption Technology, or MAT. It's a maze-like disc at the rear of the driver that absorbs 99% of unwanted resonances and distortions from behind the driver. KEF says that by absorbing that, the result is a purer, more natural performance. We've seen this in their speakers already, like the LS50 Meta and the R series, and now the Q series gets it. KEF's Uni-Q driver array is the star of the show, using a coaxial design rather than separating the tweeter and the woofer. The tweeter in KEF's driver sits right in the middle of the woofer cone, surrounded by waveguides that help steer the sound waves. It's a design KEF has been refining since 1988. This point source driver design is the heart of KEF's speakers and helps deliver their detailed sound and precise stereo imaging. You can be a little less picky with placement with this design, which can come in handy when the shape of your room proves challenging. Having your high frequency and mid-range sounds originate from a single consolidated point results in more even sound dispersion, giving you more of a sweet spot for listening, where you can still hear stereo separation clearly. The Q Meta line uses a 4-ohm design, which is a change from the prior generation. They'll need a little more power as a result, and you should make sure your amplifier or receiver is rated to play 4-ohm speakers. My experience with KEF speakers has been that while they can play just fine on 15 to 20 watts of power, they really shine when you feed them more juice. There are 8 different speakers in the Q Meta lineup. The Q1 Meta bookshelf speakers are the most compact of the line and use a 5¼ inch woofer. Despite their smaller size, they can play all the way down to 51 Hz and make either a great stereo pair in a smaller area or fantastic surrounds in a full KEF Q Meta surround system. The Q3 Meta bookshelves are a little bigger than the Q1, with a 6½ inch woofer cone that lets them dig a little deeper, down to 49 Hz. This is a big difference between the Q3 Meta and the Q350 they replace, which only played as low as 63 Hz. Both the Q1 and the Q3 put out satisfying bass on their own, and especially given their size. With the right placement in the right room, they deliver surprising impact on their own. The Q Concerto Meta bookshelves add a second woofer for a 3-way design. The mid-range woofer in the Uni-Q driver measures 4 inches, and it's supported by a 6½ inch bass driver. A set of these on some stands makes a great stereo pair in just about any room. The Q7 Meta floor standers use the same Uni-Q driver as the Q Concertos, and they add a second 6½ inch bass driver. The Q11 Meta adds a third 6½ inch bass driver, delivering the biggest sound of the Q Meta series. There are some home theater speakers that let you build a full Q Meta series surround sound system. The Q6 Meta center channel uses the same coaxial drivers as the floor standers, flanked by a pair of 6½ inch bass drivers. The Q4 Meta on-wall speakers use a slimmer enclosure than the others and can also be used as a center channel speaker. The Q8 Meta are Dolby Atmos toppers that sit on top of any of the Q Meta bookshelf or floor standing models, firing sound upward and off your ceiling for overhead surround effects. The KEF Q150 speakers from the outgoing generation are some of my favorite near-field speakers. The Q1s look very similar to the Q150s and occupy the same amount of space. I was excited to see what KEF brought with this new generation. The result? The Q1 Metas offered a sound I have come to be familiar with in the Q150s, punchy, detailed, and precise. I started by listening to some classical music because it often features wide dynamic swings, and if your amp and speakers aren't up to it, you can lose track of some of the instruments. No problem here. In the Hall of the Mountain King from Griggs Peer Gynt has always been a favorite of mine. It starts very quiet with a slow but eventually furious build to a frantic and much louder finish. The beginning of that song is where details can be hard to discern unless you're listening carefully. But the Q1 Metas were up to the task, revealing nice detail in the low horns and drums that slowly build. And once the strings kick in, I could hear the various instruments distinctly in the mix. Next, I listened to some cake songs from Fashion Nugget. I love the way the bass sounds on their albums, and I wanted to see if the Q1 Meta could keep up. The intro to the distance, which I have heard on systems from good to bad and can sound muddy over Bluetooth and on smaller speakers, sounded quite nice. The Q1 Meta kept the bass tight and defined while not sounding bloated or unfocused. No matter what I put on, I felt myself quickly lost in the music and not thinking about what the speaker could and couldn't do. It just got out of the way and let me enjoy the song. That's the best compliment I can give a speaker, really. One question might be, I have the Q150 or Q350 speakers already. Do I need to upgrade? I'd say no. The difference between the 8th generation Q series and the 9th generation Q Meta series is not drastic enough. I do believe I've heard the difference, and while I do appreciate it, I think the 8th generation is perfectly adequate. But if you're looking for a first set of nice speakers, building a wired surround system from scratch, or looking for a pair of tower speakers for a bigger room, the KEF Q Meta speakers are worth a look. They play everything you throw at them with great detail and precision. Crutchfield has a tool called SpeakerCompare that lets you listen to the speakers online using headphones, and I'd encourage you to try these KEF speakers against some other brands to get a sense of their signature sound. And if you have any questions about KEF Q Meta speakers or anything else, please get in touch. Thanks for watching.